It's time for Top Story on AM 1480 WLEA Hornell. Here's Brian O'Neill.
In 1 hour, there will be a funeral for station owner Kevin Doran at St. Anne's Church in Hornell. Mayor Sean Hogan has known Kevin Doran since childhood. Mr. Mayor, thanks for joining us. We're going to talk a little bit about Kevin Doran today and then, of course, local, state, and national issues. Mr. Mayor, thanks for joining us.
My pleasure. Again, my most sincerest sympathies to the Doran family and the passing of Kevin. I know, like you said, I've known Kevin since I was about 6 years old, and he was off at Loris College in Dubuque, Iowa, and I was running errands for my beloved Molly Doran, Kevin's mother. And I have so many fond memories of running errands for Molly and sitting with her during the day when I had days off. And as I grew older, I mean, my relationship with Molly and the Doran family went from the time I was 6 years old up until today. I mean, I used to always stay in contact with Molly and Kevin as he started his family as a young man, and he lived up on 211 Seymour, and then he lived on Spruce Street. And there's just so many things I remember fondly. Kevin kind of really honed my like for Frank Sinatra. Because I remember this is back in the early 60s when Kevin returned from his stint in radio in Mississippi, and he came home, and he was working for the Tribune before he went to work for the school district. And he used to listen to Frank Sinatra. He used to listen to Frank Sinatra as he paced the upstairs and saying his rosary. He would listen to Frank Sinatra, and I remember playing Monopoly. He used to call me up if he had like some friends up and they needed a fourth to play Monopoly. They'd stick me in as a placeholder and play Monopoly. Listen to the music of the era, and then Kevin went to teach at Hornell High School in the early 60s through actually he taught up. When I was a senior in high school, I actually had Kevin Doran for history class, and I graduated in 1970. And shortly after that, Kevin went to work for a school program where they would go sell magazines for fundraisers.
If we could get back to the teaching for just a moment, Sean, what was he like in class?
It was great. Well, Kevin was certainly a student of history, as you can tell by his interest in his shows and, his talks with Gary Ostrower and Savo Yaromovich and Dr. Heinemann. Kevin was a student of history and politics. So he was great, and he engaged his students. He gave great lectures, well-liked. He was a very well-liked teacher and well-respected. It was a different time back then, but it was a fun time, a great time, and. So, when he came home, then I had, known him in his early stages, and, they used to treat me like the younger brother. Stanley was the older brother, Kevin was the middle one, and I was the baby of the family.
Right.
I watched, and there was just so many fond memories of my childhood with the Dorans and listening to Molly's stories, of the Easter uprising in Dublin in 1920 or 21, and how she came to this country, and then Patty or William Doran, her husband and Kevin's father, came and escaping, tyranny, basically, and how they created a life here in Hornell, New York. So
now that brings me to a question. When you talk about Kevin's father, Kevin's father, Willie Doran, the alderman, was friends with your father, the mayor. Can you tell us about that?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, that was, politics was a lot more rough and tumble back in those days in Hornell. It was much more partisan, and it was also there was a lot of inter-party squabbling, as you might realize or expect at that time. But yeah, no, they were good friends because they were both certainly Democrats. They were both aldermen at the same time, and and then my father went on to be mayor of Hornell for 3 years, from 1955 to from 1952 to 55. He served for 2.5 years. A term and a half, I should say, for 3 years. And then my father went on into state service with Averell Harriman, who was then governor of the state of New York. Yeah, so they certainly knew each other, and we had a relationship. And my grandmother, Lulu Hogan, was good friends with Molly. They used to speak on the phone on a regular basis, and I think that's how I got to be the errand boy for Molly.
Uh-huh.
And I remember Molly, and she had a dog, Maggie. Maggie was a little white dog, and we spent. And I also, this is how far back we go. I remember sitting in the living room on the inauguration parade of John F. Kennedy, sitting in your grandmother's living room. This goes back a long way because your father was a Democrat at the time.
Right.
So that's how far back that goes. But your grandmother was a staunch Democrat, and I remember sitting there watching the parade and John Kennedy's inauguration, and I think that'd been 1961, in January of '61 when the president took office. And your neighbor at the time was Mary Rhodes, who lived across the street, and actually in the house that your father eventually bought and lived in. It was not Mary Rhodes; it was Mary. It was Dunn. Was it Dunn who lived in?
That sounds
house?
right.
Yeah, Dunn, and that was the house that your father finally bought. Dunn was a World War I veteran. That's what I remember about him. But then there were so many fond memories. But I mean, we were so close, and over the years, as your father would offer advice to me, and and encouragement, and we had our moments, just like the family would have their moments, and we would cross swords or disagree, but the anger would never last. We always would come to the realization that we have much more in common that than any differences, and the strong memories of being a part of his family always won out. And like I say, I have so many fond memories, and he was just a wonderful. We were all kind of close in age, my other 7 siblings, and so Kevin was basically my older brother that kind of molded me. In fact, I almost went to Loras College.
Really?
Yeah, because I was accepted to Loras College, and
you ended up going to Bonaventure, though.
And somewhere in my archives, in an attic box somewhere, I have that acceptance letter. But I ended up going to St. Bonaventure, and the Bonaventure was a very powerful basketball team at the time. That kind of won out over Dubuque, Iowa. And there's just, one of these days I'm going to put down, some memories and thoughts and some of the things that, your father always blamed his bad back on me because we were up in the attic at 211 Seymour, and we were doing some work in the attic, and we had cardboard, and he kept saying, "Get that cardboard off the stairs, get that cardboard off the stairs." Of course, I was a young kid, and I was just kicking it down the stairs. Well, he got a phone call, and he tried to get down the stairs on the cardboard, and he slipped and went down the stairs, on the attic stairs, one step at a time. And he remembered that as a memory that I'm the one that caused his his bad back for all those years.
Oh boy!
And so there's so many stories that are too numerable to mention them all. But like I say, we have a long relationship, and I loved him like a brother. And I certainly am going to miss him, even though we didn't have a lot of contact on a regular basis, just through the radio and stuff like that, or he'd call me, and but he was always a part of my inner circle and my and I considered him family.
He was very pleased with the way you handled St. James there in the 2014-2015 situation, and prevented the hospital from closing, and also was very happy for the Alstom news.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, and I certainly appreciated Kevin's support and his advice, and he was a very astute guy, very learned, very well read, and like I say, people didn't often agree with Kevin, and he certainly was. He had his strong beliefs and his strong opinions, and that.
Oh, sure.
And I respected him for that. He didn't pull any punches. Like I say, I didn't always agree with him. I think that hurt him a little bit, that I didn't always agree with with him on certain issues, but I didn't let it into. He came up, and I can give you a story, and it was one of those periods where we were kind of, our relationship wasn't the best, and he came up. I was sitting here at City Hall, and it was near Christmas, and it was after after business hours, but my light was on, and the front door is open, and my office door is open, and I hear this guy say, "Hello," and I go, "Yes," and it was your dad. It was Kevin. And he says, "I want to tell you right now, it's not worth being angry." I just read a book about John Adams and Thomas Jefferson, how they were so close, and then they became apart because of political differences. And he just finished reading that book, and he said, "I'm done with this." He says, we're not going to, this is a profound book, and how they died on the same day, minutes apart from each other, John Adams and Thomas Jefferson. And they both reconciled their differences. And he says, "I'm not waiting for them." This is, let's just, this life's too short, and let's get on about this. And it was an emotional exchange, and it was one that I certainly appreciated, and we never had a bad word after that.
That's a great story. Sean, the flood of 72, that was a big moment for Hornell history, and he did some nonstop broadcasts there. I suppose what he had to do is get permission from the FCC to keep it on all night, but because it was, it's an AM station, and in those days he had to get permission to do that kind of thing. What do you remember about the flood of 72?
I was home for summer vacation from college in 72, and I remember that like it was today, basically. Kevin took a lead role, and he was even recognized by the broadcast industry, but even the then mayor Andy Mazzella gave him a city proclamation for his, service to the community during the flood of 72. And Kevin would, just keep everyone up to date with what was going on, whatever. In fact, so much, that we've had similar natural disasters, but not to that magnitude over time. I think back, if you look back into the early 90s, we had an ice storm. Again, Kevin stayed on the radio for hours because it was a terror. A lot of people within the city were without power, all over without power, and needed assistance. And so that's when I dubbed him. I said, Kevin is the master of disaster. He certainly, had experience from the '72 disaster, and anytime we had issues of natural disasters or ice storms or whatever, Kevin would go that extra mile with his coverage and keeping people informed. He knew the power of the radio, and he loved radio. He loved the medium, and he was the consummate a consummate radio announcer and news person.
Do you know, one of the things I noticed in going back and listening to the old recordings from the 70s and 80s, musically and movie-wise, pop culture-wise, he did not keep up with the times. As far as news went and news styles and the current trends in the news media, he really did keep up with the times. If you listen to him in the 70s, it doesn't sound exactly the same as the 80s. His voice quality did. He had what they call voice consistency. And but he did, he would watch CNN and Fox and ABC and say, you know what they did on the news last night, you ought to pick this up. He did keep up with the times in that way.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, he certainly was very aware. He knew when a good story was brewing, and he just had a natural instinct for it. And it's just one of those gifts that he had. Like I say, other stories, I remember when WLEA was up over the Mint Shop here on Main Street. Now it's the Cat's Cradle or the Family Services, where John Lusk was. That was the WLEA studios. And he used to take me up there because he always had the relationship with that radio station was owned by Charlie Henderson.
The senator, yeah, the former senator.
State assemblyman. And I used to spend some time up there when Kevin was, recording advertisements. He always had that voice, and it was always good. It was a very distinct voice, very, very professional radio voice. In fact, over the years and my political career, I would always go to WLA and have Kevin record my political ads.
He did a good job on those.
Oh, absolutely, and helped me author them. Like I said, I just have so many fond memories, and I'm just so sorry that he had to, suffer in the later days, and because he was, he was certainly a very spiritual and devoted and devout Roman Catholic, and he just was a great guy, wonderful, wonderful person.
We're talking with Hornell Mayor Sean Hogan, who knew station owner Kevin Doran since childhood. And Mayor Hogan, we're going to come back in segment 2 and talk about state, local, and national politics. That's when we get back here on Top Story on AM 1480 WLER. Special thanks to the mayor for coming on with such a nice tribute here to Kevin Doran in segment 1. Back after this. Back on Top Story, I'm Brian O'Neill, Saturday morning with the Hornell Mayor Sean Hogan. Mayor Hogan, on local issues, anything going on with the Alstom deal that you can talk about?
No, nothing more to report. I think it's on track, and, I just think that would let it take its course. Obviously, we know it's coming, but there's a lot of hurdles to get over as far as dotting the I's, crossing the T's. And I guess what we say when all that's done, there'll be an announcement by the company, and we'll move on from there. But everyone's planning and moving in the direction that the negotiations will be successful. And I have every confidence that they will be. So we just have to give it some time, let the parties work out the issues that need to be worked out, and we'll move on from there.
As far as St. James Hospital goes, as we said in segment 1, you pretty much saved St. James from closing. Is there anything new at St. James? We know from talking to you last time that Dr. Ismail Mayer, the anesthesiologist, is now on the St. James board. Anything else going on at St. James we can talk about, Sean?
And it's a constantly fluid situation because there's so much that needs to be rebuilt at St. James as far as staffing and doing the services. Right now, it's a lot of the former employees that left have returned, especially nursing services. There are we've had as many as 20 inpatients in the hospital on any given day. I mean, in hospital beds. So, St. James is alive and well. There's a lot still to be done. Obviously we have to fine-tune the financial picture. We have to bring into scale, the budget to reflect the size of the institution we now are. We don't have 121 beds anymore. We're going to have between 10 and 20. So our budget should reflect that, and how we reach there is something that's got to be done administratively with the work of the administration and the board and our partners with the University of Rochester Medicine. So we are working in that direction. What we're eagerly awaiting is the decision of the state in regards to monies for the construction of a new facility. That's key. That's a definite. We're waiting with bated breath for that, and also some what they call the VAP money, which is money to help us operate as we right the ship and try to balance the budgets and reflect that the hospital is sustainable and it can be sustained with the revenue sources that we have. So there's a lot to be done, but we're making tremendous progress, and St. James is here to stay. And again, I reiterate, if people would only support the hospital locally, not only with using its services, but also, writing a check to the foundation just makes it all that much healthy. And it makes our task easier if people all pull together. So use the services at St. James. If you're so inclined, write a check to the foundation, and we'll continue to make progress. And I'm very pleased where we are, and people should take great comfort in the fact that we do have a hospital here in Hornell, full service hospital.
Mayor Sean Hogan, I was going to ask you some state and national issues. We ran out of time. But I want to thank you very much, especially for segment 1 today, remembering the life of Kevin Doran. And I want to thank you for joining us, Sean.
Yeah, my pleasure. And again, my sympathies to the entire Doran family. And he certainly was someone that I admired and respected, and I'll always have him in my heart.
Thank you very much. Hornell Mayor Sean Hogan on AM 1480 WLEA Hornell.